It's working.
All right, we are back just past 3 o'clock. Okay. Here with David Englander for the other side of this stuff.
We're on the same
I
side.
think we're just about there. So David, we took testimony, or we explained what we were proposing. And we got some clarification on some things using Alan as a resource, but we certainly had some questions that we wanted to ask. First of all, we had developed this language after we talked to you, and you had talked to EPA, and I'm sorry that Representative Parsons isn't here right now. He almost dropped. If he had something in his hand, he would have dropped it when you said, oh yeah, you called the EPA and they said it's fine. And after the last conversation, which was it could take 6 to 8 months.
Well, I think when I wrote to you, I said, are you sitting?
Yes.
Yes. Because we couldn't believe it either.
Yes. So those are really kind of right up there with the best emails that you could possibly get. So in terms of work. And So what we put out for proposal was to say the owners of rental target housing, which is a specific thing, personally perform all work under this chapter on properties in which they have an interest shall be exempt from subsection A of the section, which is a subsection that requires insurance. Where does the Department of Health fall on this?
So for the record, my name is David Englander. I'm the Senior Policy and Legal Advisor to the Department of Health. We've reviewed the language with you and the Vice Chair and spoken about the EPA. The Department has no objection to this language, especially in light of the findings that it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find the insurance, with the caveats that are included in the proposal. That is the use of the term target housing, which is defined, as well as owners defined. And as long as we're talking about the universe of folks who can do their own work without getting insurance are the landowners themselves.
So this fits into just what the protocol that you pretty much have supported.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to clarify the larger picture, post-1978 housing, there are no restrictions on who can do the work. Is that correct?
Well, there's no lead.
Right. The house was built in 1980. Somebody doesn't have to get lead abatement because it's allowed to have lead.
So a homeowner can do whatever work they want without licensure,
As far as lead is
as
concerned.
far as lead is concerned. Representative Barrows with an S.
But not property managers?
Post 78, anybody can do work on what is presumed to be latex paint.
Right. So you're saying that only owners can do the work? That was what I heard.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about pre 78 or post 78?
Pre-78.
Pre 78, only the way this amendment, the way I read the amendment is only the owners themselves can do the work. So this makes it look like it functionally mirrors, for the most part, the requirements on childcare, which is the persons themselves have to do the work.
Right, so just to be clear, not property owners, not property managers,
I
only
see.
the owners.
So property owners do not have to be licensed if they're doing work in their own homes. Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay, let's try one more time.
So I guess okay. So property owners who rent out a property, they have to do the work themselves. They can't have a property manager who manages the upkeep of all of their properties do the work. They have to physically do the work?
Yes,
Yes.
or they can get someone who is licensed to do the work. So they don't have to do the work. They can hire a firm who would do it.
Right, okay.
Okay, great.
I apologize.
Yep, no, I'm just clarifying, making sure that I totally understand, that's all.
David, we had some discussion also about the difference between certification and licensure and why this will create, previously, we had childcare operators, the building where childcare centers are, could be certified. And everyone else, landlords and other people working on pre-78 homes needed to be licensed and insured.
Yes.
This removes the insurance requirement for landlords, so we now have 3 tiers in essence. And there was a question about what is, with the removal of the insurance requirement, what is the distinction between certification and licensure? Is there one other than the money, the fee?
I do want, I guess, two different categories. I guess I don't think tiers, because everybody has to get the education in order to conduct the work. So there is a discrepancy in how much you have to know before conducting the work. So I would say that. But yes, so that's the difference is really the functional difference, the practical difference between a childcare certified and a licensed, if Simmons Amendment was passed, a licensed landowner, is the difference would be the fee.
And what is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of having the distinction between certification and licensure?
Well, originally, the purpose was to create an exemption for the childcare. And the reason why I agree that this amendment makes sense is because we don't have to undo the rule. We don't have to go through the rulemaking process. This gets, in my opinion, reading, is that it gets strategically at what I understood the committee's concerns were, which is the insurance requirement in the building lenders to get the insurance. And that gets, so from the department's perspective, it seems like we're solving the primary problem.
And correct. And I think we all agree that there were some questions about, so with the removal of the need for insurance, what's the distinction between?
Yeah, and that's the fee. And the fee for roads reminders, it's $300 for a 5-year license.
And we heard, we just heard that is there also another, is it $300 plus anything else? Or is it just?
The license itself costs $300. The train, there can be a cost associated with the training.
And is there another annual fee cost that's on top of that?
I'm unaware of another annual fee.
Alan, can I ask?
The department is currently requiring that a landlord working on his own property have both the $300 every 5-year firm license as well as a $50 per year supervisor license. They're currently requiring 2 licenses. I showed you one page where they said that.
Yeah, sorry, that's true, and I think I showed you some information that's actually what EPA requires. I'm sorry, that is correct.
Okay.
So Ricky's correct.
Okay. So
I was talking about, I apologize, I was talking about only the license. Sure. License fee is that, so there is an additional fee.
which is the
Which
EPA.
is, so one is the landowner, and then they have to be a firm. And that's the language I quoted to you from EPA, that EPA itself says, if you're a landowner, you have to also get a firm license, an individual, and then a firm license.
Okay. Does anybody remember any residual questions from our earlier conversation that we wanted to ask the department?
No.
My understanding is that so following the usual legislative timeframe, this would take effect July 1st if it were to pass.
No. You have it as taking effect on passage,
Okay.
which may be July 1st, depending on how things go.
Maybe October.
No, I think we have a July 1 deadline
Yeah.
for that.
Okay. Representative Preston.
I just want to say thank you for hanging in there with us and figuring this out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, whoever you talk to at the EPA.
Yeah.
The trick was,
Send them a rose.
the trick was to write everybody at EPA.
Oh,
We reached every one of our contacts.
okay.
And then somebody, I assume by mistake, replied.
I wish so.
Somebody got in real trouble. You apply.
Probably got a gallon of syrup.
That's right.
So you interpreted, sorry, I'm out of the office, to mean, yes, go ahead?
Yes. Is that not?
We thought perhaps instead for Edward P. Anderson.
Thank you.
All right, no, but I appreciate everybody who's been talking about this, Alan and David, thank you for helping us narrow down what we can do. And really, I mean, this has clearly been, I prefer this kind of resolution than the revolution that would have happened if we, with a couple thousand landlords coming to our committee wanting to share their thoughts about it, which is, I know they all have a voice and they had, they expressed it through emails and phone calls, but this was kind of the way I would hope to have this resolution done. So, again, EPA, Knockwood, that was awesome. And, I think what we'll do is we're figuring out how to get this into a bill that's going to cross the line this year. And we're going to let this subcommittee, we're going to let this language steep overnight. We'll make time for it tomorrow in terms of just having a straw poll on approving us trying to get it into another, approving the language and then trying to get it into another bill. And then we'll see how that process goes over the next 2 weeks or so.
Well, let me know if I can be of assistance.
We will.
We will.
Bring if you have to bring a fire extinguisher, we'll let you know. So thank you.
As long as it doesn't have.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
No, we're not taking a break.
You need another? Oh, bye, Alan.
Two scoops. Oh, you guys, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alice.
Next.
Let me get it for you. What's your favorite?
But we have a quorum. You need to go get something, Damien?
Sure.
I'll let you go, but
Dying for ice.
do you want some salad?
I got salad over here.
That's what I should have.
Ice cream.
But yeah, come on. I'm from Massachusetts. More ice cream per capita than any other state in the country.
Really?
Yes.
Carvel?
So, Kimball's if I can.
Oh,
So, but
Kim's.
I don't know what that is.
yeah.
Where's that from?
Local chain, Carlisle, Westford. There's one in New Hampshire. Wow. Kimball's Farm.
I'm gonna ask
If you
my
guys are down
sister.
there.
Do you have like about a dozen windows where you go get ice cream?
I'll pay for it later.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, our supervisor.
There's a couple of places like that in Massachusetts, but Kimball's is the one.
In Massachusetts, it's the one that's gonna be talking about when I heard.
It is, and I did grow up going there and Brigham's quite a bit. Yeah, the Big Dig, Mississippi Mud. Well, anyway,
Dig was probably really expensive. You didn't get anything.
I wrote this people.
I don't know.
I just like picking on Boston.
Sox might win though.
Boston.
I would have thought from being from South Shore time, you might have an EMAC at Bolio's or.
No, I'm from the Metro West. So Framingham, Natick.
Okay.
Yep, I
That's
grew
where
up
my
right next to
sister
those
lives.
towns.
Yeah.
Wellesley,
Wayland.
Wayland.
So,
Buddy's in Waltham now. Seems pretty cool.
Waltham, yeah, Wayland's right.
Isn't that
Framingham, so.
not too far from Woburn either. It's just the W's. It's all the W's.
Okay, yeah. It's a little bit, it's like 40 minutes.
How big is Wayland?
Okay, well, people are being entertained.
Yep, I will join the meeting here. Wayland has grown quite a bit since I lived there.
In a geography lesson, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
same invite as this morning, Ron?
Yes.
So When I lived in Wayland, it was 8 to 10,000. I think it's more like 12 to 14 now. So it's a substantially different town. Yeah, good schools.
They are. They're just building a massive new school in Waltham.
Yeah,
They're building like a huge one.
Why do you know that?
Because my buddy just moved there and he's got young kids. Yeah, no, I like to keep track
New
of
England school.
Massachusetts school buildings.
Representative Elder
I also-
represents Huntington and Waltham.
That's right. I've been on meeting for years.
Yeah, I like the shopping.
Oh.
Got family there and
Are you being
my high school girlfriend went to Walnut Hill.
Yeah.
You know, Hopedale?
That's a start right there.
A lot of people don't.
I know the name.
Oh, okay, my sister's there.
Anyway, all right.
Sorry.
Go back to that.
So, all right, we're all set. We still been live. So committee and Damien, we have heard more than a couple of bucket loads of testimony on S-103. So it's time, I think it's time to just start the conversation about the bill and about how we want to pass this bill and what we want to put in it. I'll lay out two scenarios just as we start. And I think I've mentioned this before. If we pass S-103 as it was sent to us from the Senate, if we make zero changes to it, if we agree as a committee, then we would be concurring with the Senate amendment. And then that bill would probably have to go spend some time in judiciary, and, hopefully no more than a day. But if they didn't make a change in it and this passed through the House unchanged from the Senate, it would be sent to the governor. If we make changes, which means if we find something in what was sent to us from S-102 or 103 that we wanted to change, even if it's just a couple of words, it would go through the same process here and then it would go back to the Senate for their contemplation. If we were to add the amendment that we heard about over the last 2 days about schools, that would constitute a change. And it would probably have to go not only to judiciary for a drive-by, but to the education committee for a drive-by. So with that said, before we start doing a walk through, just a sec. Before we start doing a walk and talk through, because we also have this on our calendar for tomorrow, on our agenda for tomorrow as well. Let's open up a discussion about S-103. What does the committee feel about S-103? Representative Krasno?
Just a quick question. So no matter what, it sounds like it's probably gonna go to judiciary for an eyes.
Damien was there this morning.
Okay, if they change anything in it, does that then have to?
They would offer an amendment to us.
Okay,
Unless we gave them ownership, which is not what we're expecting to do.
okay, so if they would have to do an amendment.
Yeah.
And then, but that wouldn't further the delay of.
If it became something so deep and necessary, then we would, just like we did with with S-100, we would have to give them ownership of the bill if they really felt like there was some massive changes. Usually, again, that's not usually the case, but
Right.
Damien, did a walkthrough with that, or started a
did.
walkthrough with them today, and they were very curious about stuff.
Oh, they were? Curious.
So, we started the walkthrough this morning. We made it through section 2 at a relatively high level. But as you can imagine, there were many good questions and we only had a half hour. I ran for 50 minutes before the chair gently encouraged me to make way for other witnesses. So, yeah, there was a lot of discussion this morning. They did get through the substantive provisions in the bill to the point where it starts to repeat itself, but I think some of you will probably remember and others have probably blocked out. Getting through those first two sections took us a couple of hours, at least, before we could kind of get to the point where we could just say this is more of the same. So yeah, there is some interest over there. I don't know if they'll want to see the bill again, or if they'll be satisfied after this morning, so.
We'll certainly check in.
Thank you.
So committee, floor is open for conversation. The bill as it stands right now has basically two main provisions in it, which are the section of do not darken my door and the section on severe or pervasive. And the third piece could be the school piece.
And also equal pay.
Well, equal pay is within, yes, equal pay is within, it's not a separate section, it's part of section 1.
It's part of section 1. It's
Okay.
one of the subdivisions within section 1.
Yeah.
So.
But the concept is definitely there. So I would open the floor for conversation about, again, before we get to specific, if there's any specific verbiage we want to address, where are we on this bill as a committee, Representative Elder?
Excuse me. Yeah, I like the bill, of course. Well, maybe not of course, but I do. I would like to add the public accommodation language we've been considering. I understand that would mean that, it's not just a straight concurrence, but I think based on testimony we've heard, it's compelling enough to go ahead and send it back to the Senate with that change. So that would be my preference is to add the language we have for Kate McClin. But no, excuse me, that's the wrong language. Add the language we have that we discussed this morning about public accommodation. Looking at the wrong thing.
And you're speaking specifically about the not excluding the education, the student harassment.
That's right. The public accommodation as it
provision.
relates to education, I would like
Yes.
included in 103 because I think it belongs there.
I agree. I think we should, I'm not going to sit and go through all of the myriad reasons, but I strongly agree that we should add the education piece.
Yeah.
I would like to move 103 as basically as it came to us, or as we've discussed it. The education piece, I would like to include it because I'm really struggling with the fact that we offer protections to adults that we don't offer to children who probably need them even more. I do feel like I need to spend a little more time on it, a broader understanding of the implications, but I don't see that affecting my desire to pass it, just improving my understanding.
345, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, we're steeping everything on overnight, so just, Representative LeBon?
So if we add the education piece, this bill might not go through at all this year, S-103.
Well, there is a possibility when you send things back to the Senate that it may not get picked up.
Okay.
That's just, and I know that the education piece is being dealt with in the Education Committee.
We're taking testimony now.
Right now.
And so until we have in the rare event that we might get a clear picture of whether or not they would include it, I mean, they have to go through their own processes too, where it could be amended or it can be changed. The question for us is, do we rely on the Senate to carry that piece across, or do we put this in and not as a belts and suspenders, but just to make sure that the language is being dealt with. I'm sure that if it went over there, that their education committee would see it, not just the economic development committee that did the work on the first two pieces of the bill. So the answer is it's a definite maybe that it could not make it across. Stranger things have happened, but also if we get it there soon enough and we can get it through our processes soon enough, then we're lined up. I think we have enough calendar to get it approved by the Senate.
Now, if we don't, can we take it up again next year, just this piece?
If they don't take it up in the Senate,
No, I mean, if we, let me rephrase it. If we pass S-103 without the education piece in it, can we bring that education piece back up next year?
Yeah.
So
I have a question.
So we're kind of gambling if the Senate is going to be able to push this across in time. Right now, if we put that piece in.
I don't like the word gambling, but yes, I think there's a chance there, which is the same thing. Yeah, Caleb.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the Senate could just pull it out and send it back, I mean, that's the thing. They really don't they could say, we put it in 461, we're pulling it back, here it is, and then we can pass it, So I think the Senate wants 103. I don't think they're just gonna let it sit. We said it, now, I'm speculating, but I think they really want it. And I think it sends a strong message. And if they say, you know what, we're putting it in 461, that's really where it belongs, great. Pull it out of this. And we'll just pass this as it is. But I don't think it's the worst thing to have a vehicle that's kind of traveling a little at the end of the year. And that's just my take. Of course, it's possible that they'll just say, how dare you? And we're going to leave it on our wall for the year. But I don't really see it. I think that they might, if anything, just kind of take it out and send it back, And so I think we'd probably wind up getting another bite of that apple anyway. But I think that this is a moment at which we do have an opportunity to signal again that the House supports this language. We've already done that once in 483. And I think now is an opportunity to do it again in a bill that actually speaks to discrimination more specifically. So I think that it's work we've already put out of the House, but this combines it with a bill that I think gives a more holistic picture at the kinds of discrimination prevention we're trying to implement statewide in every public space without exception. So that would just be one reason that I would be somewhat bullish on 103 making it through, even if we did this.
And just from a like, what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks? Let's just say let's just stipulate that we're leaving on May 12th. Nothing goes wrong and we fit the schedule. We're going to finish work on bills. We're going to finish work on bills that we want to get across this year. This week, right? We have a time frame that we have. Any bills that we may work on or pass next week are either informational or we don't like, if we do the homelessness bill of rights, I've made a decision that we can't fit this in here, so we're okay if the summer's over. But the other thing, when you're wondering what you're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks, part of it will be following the legislation and making sure that the Senate knows we're very interested in them passing the bill. That's part of what the last couple of weeks are. And certainly from where you won't see us much because we'll be doing a lot of that chasing as well. But this is where when you're like, what am I supposed to do now that we're done? We're not done. And so when you see the way the schedule is built, 10 a.m. and then 3:30 p.m., that's part of what we're talking, there's going to be back and forth. Bills are going to come back and forth between the House and Senate if they're given permission to do that in a parliamentary way. You'll hear that request come up on the floor. So just be like, I'm not ruling out, yes, we're taking a chance, but also I think my personal feeling is that if we don't include it, we're not doing service to what we heard in the committee. Yeah.
Sort of following on Caleb's analysis, I would say, yes, S-103, it passed the Senate already, it's clear they want it. So we send it back, then that's great. with this attached, they don't have to, they're not starting, their education committee is up to speed on it. If they don't include it in their own bill, then they've taken the testimony, they've done the deliberations, they're ready to go. So it's not, there's no real delay there. They're ready to act. I think that's my take on it.
And they may react negatively. Like, we'll deal with that, as this Caleb was saying. If they cut it out and send it back, then we'll deal with it. But I think it's, anyway. I'll just- Yeah.
You go first. You go ahead. So, yeah, no, I was just gonna echo that, not only does it not do the testimony for justice to not include this, I also just am gonna be like the broken record and say again, as one of our general things is I'm looking at the probate equity questions on the, and I don't know if you all have gotten emails asking, does your committee use the probate equity questions? And how is your committee addressing equity in the bills you're addressing? I've been getting emails asking me that. Have you all not been getting those? Okay, so therein says speaks a thing. But anyways, my point is that as the committee that handles equity issues, I'm just gonna read the broken record and say that again, that I think it doesn't hurt to be repetitive because it sends a very clear message on our values and where we stand and what we believe in as far as the committee that is designated to handle those issues. I get it that it also has to go through judiciary and education, so be it. I feel that based off of the testimony we've heard, based off of the jurisdiction for which we have and the purview of the public accommodation and public schools being a public accommodation, I feel that we should pass it with that.
As much as I hate to delay this bill, based on the testimony today, which, just really upset me that these things happen to people and that shouldn't happen. I say put it in and let it go and see what happens. And if we can't pass that part this year, we'll pass it next year. But I can't ignore the testimony today. Thank you.
So I have a question for Will. This was asked yesterday. I was asked to ask you again about, in different sections of the bill, gender identity is mentioned as a protected class, but not in the equal pay section. And I just want to get a clarification on what that was. My memory is that it's I think you stated, or I think it was you that stated it's an internal thing. Like, it's not an easily identifiable thing, perhaps, but if I felt that I was discriminated against because of my gender identity, would I not, and it was allowable, and let's say I didn't have any, and let's just say I wanted that I was being called out for my gender identity and discriminated against or harassed, simply by bringing it up, isn't that outing myself, or isn't that saying that this is my gender identity and this is who I am and you've been discriminating against me, as opposed to I'm a woman, you're discriminating against me. I mean, I'm just curious, like what is, I mean, because the question is that something that should be added or could be added, or is it something that needs work on it in order to include it in other elements of the discrimination law?
So Julio Thompson, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Unit. So I think the question yesterday had to do with why gender identity and other protected categories like religion were not included in the equal pay provision. Equal pay is a standard where you are entitled to, as a matter of law, equal pay for equal work, unless there are some certain very narrow exceptions like a seniority system and so forth. And it's a violation, even if the employer didn't intend to do it. They just did it. Could even be a computational error in their accounting system. If you're paying someone less under current law because of their sex, it's a violation of the law, and they're entitled to reparation for that. That's different than saying I want to treat someone poorly. That's already illegal for all of the categories. So harassment, someone based on their sexual orientation or all of the other protected categories is already unlawful. It's right now in the law, it only covers sex, and that's been the way in the United States since 1963 when President Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act. And so this law would expand it to race, national origin, and disability. In prior sessions, and that was a question I was offering, I should say, why it didn't come up in prior sessions, was that there had been concern that if you include, and I think I used religion, but sexual orientation as well, if you include that in equal pay, employers might create an opportunity for mischief, basically, for the home office. Let's say it's in Connecticut, to send out an email saying, we need a list of all the sexual orientation of all our employees in Vermont so we can compare them and make sure that we're not violating equal pay law, right? In this session in the Senate, I addressed that with disability. Same thing. We need to make sure they're disabled. They're paid the same as our non-disabled who are doing the same work. And that's illegal expressly under federal law, as Damien pointed out last week. And so in the Senate, I said, there may be a path forward where you would make the caveat, well, if you're going to cover disability, it doesn't give you permission to go ask. It is possible, I mean, it didn't come up in the Senate, it is possible to have that same prohibition on asking for the other protected categories. I think that's conceivable. I think you could do it with language. I'm not sure how easy it would be to administer, but you could say, well, right now it says nothing in this section allows you to ask about disability that you can't already ask about. If you add that to gender identity, well, you're not authorized to ask about gender identity, so it might be a language. But I mean, that was really the issue. Is we've encountered cases in federal litigation where employers from other states have, like home offices, have visited, a branch office in another state, and then come back and said, seems like, this is a case brought out of the state of New York by the New York Civil Liberties Union. And pardon me just referring to what actually happened in the case, because it's very upsetting, or I think it's very upsetting. It just said, seems like there's a lot of gay employees at this office. Can you give me a list of who's gay in that office or not, right? And there was a lawsuit that ensued to object to that. So there is concern, I think, and for different stakeholders, that you wouldn't want to inadvertently create a mechanism for employers to help people on their religion. So we need a list of all religions to make sure that Presbyterians and Lutherans are in the pay, like it could get to that ridiculous level in theory. Or most employees, who they worship is for some it's private, some it's not. And so that was the concern with the other protected categories that arose in prior sessions. And Damien had put in the Senate a fix. I think it's a sufficient fix for disability. And then I think the question now for the committee going forward, if you want to broaden the categories, is where you expand that fix to make sure this doesn't give employers a permission slip to start making inquiries about things which otherwise are private. That I think is, that did not really get pursued in the Senate committee, but that's awesome. We're talking about what's possible.
that might be an avenue if the committee is interested in. We would, in the civil rights unit, be uncomfortable, I think, from an enforcement standpoint, if you added those categories and then didn't say something, and then employers feel like they have license now to create a database of all that stuff so that they can do an equal pay audit. And once they learn that stuff, it's hard to unlearn it, right? And so that would be worrisome for us because we're also very concerned about employee privacy. Let them choose what they want to express rather than have the employer mandate that they express certain private things that some employees wish should be private.
So the key, and going back to your first part of your statement, the key piece here, the key differential between the equal pay piece and any of the other pieces is that this is almost technical, right? Paying somebody, I mean, it could be on purpose, but it's almost technical. It could be a mistake. It could be.
That's where Mr. Chairman, it's often called strict liability. And there are a few defenses, for example, this did come up in the Senate. If you're hiring a new employee and you have to pay them more because it's COVID and workers are scarce, even if that results in a pay disparity, that sort of thing, the law says you can do it for business reasons that are unrelated to sex. So it isn't and it doesn't perpetuate an existing pay disparity. So the employer has to prove two things. One, they have a market reason, so to speak, and you're not perpetuating past sexism. That's in the law currently. But otherwise, yeah, if you violate, it is it's liability plus attorney's fees. If it's intentional, Vermont law has double damages. So they do punish the wrongdoer if they find that they're doing it willfully. But yeah, just a negligent oversight. And that's true for disability. If you negligently fail to answer your emails asking for accommodations for a disabled employee, and that's unreasonable for you not to have read your emails and responded, you're responsible for that. And that's been Vermont law since 1991, before the ADA. So we do have a couple of laws where it's not about the employer having a bad heart, so to speak. I think the deal that Vermont made for its workforce is just like equal pay for equal work. It's pretty simple. And some very narrow exceptions that seem to be acceptable to workers and employers alike.
Thank you. Sure. So committee, I hear consensus right now to include it. So Damien, consider that included.
To include the
amendment that was discussed.
Are we talking about the education amendment?
Yes.
Just making sure, because we were just talking about equal pay, so I wanted to.
Yeah, no,
sure I was.
So the yes, education, public accommodation piece.
Okay.
Now, and committee, so we have time on this tomorrow. I think for homework, just like to review the bill. Because tomorrow, I think I want to stop now. We've bounced around. We heard quite a bit of emotional stuff today and kind of, yeah.
Before we go, there's another amendment that while we have Julio here, I think it's worth discussing.
Which is?
So in testimony, Karen Stackpole brought up disparate impact claims, which are claims that, good example of a disparate impact claim is that the employer has a policy that says we only give light duty to employees who have a restriction because of a workers' comp injury. Well, so that means individuals with a workers' comp injury who have a lifting restriction can get a lifting restriction. However, a woman who's pregnant and whose doctor gives her a lifting restriction can't. So that would be a disparate impact claim where on its face, the policy is neutral, but as it impacts certain parties in a way that's discriminatory. So we've provided an language in the bill right now that says you don't need to provide a comparator, like you don't need to compare yourself to another employee except for claims alleging equal pay discrimination. And so this would amend that to say, except for claims alleging equal pay discrimination or disparate impact discrimination, an employee does not need to do that. So I discussed this with Julio. Karen Stackpole raised this, and I think Julio agreed that it was an oversight. Since he's here, it might make sense just to hear from him briefly on this, because I can add that to the amendment.
Leo Thompson, Attorney General's Office. I think you've summarized it correctly. A disparate impact case, the very essence of it is that one group fares worse under a neutral standard, even if it's not intended to be discriminatory, that one group fares worse than another group. That's the very nature of the claim. So I think I mentioned before, like a height standard. Sometimes there are written examinations that might have a disproportionate screening effect against certain types of applicants. And the way you prove that case is to show that these people, a certain percentage of this group passes at this rate and another group passes at a much lower rate. So the second group, the harmed class, is entitled to some remedy. So, in the Senate, the language that was added only added equal pay. And so I think just for understanding how to apply the law, we would recommend that disparate impact be added to the exclusion.
Maybe is that okay? I see heads nodding. Is that?
Yes.
I'll give a thumbs up.
Where that is exactly.
So it is on the bottom of page 3, the top of page 4, subsection J in section 1. And so we would say, except for claims alleging a violation of subdivision A7 of this section or disparate impact discrimination, an employee shall not be required to demonstrate the existence.
Does disparate impact need a citation or?
No,
That's a commonly used term.
It's a key core of discrimination.
Yeah.
Which section was that again?
It's in section 1. It's bottom of page 3, top of page 4.
Which version are you all looking at? Are we still looking at the as passed by Senate version, or is there a draft version that I'm missing?
No, there's no draft version. It's as passed by Senate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So it's very last line of page 3 onto the top 3 lines of page 4.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Insert
you.
a sophomore. So they're losing.
Yeah,
Jerks.
they're always after.
Just a courier.
The committee, are we ready to vote on this tomorrow?
Yes.
All right, and so tomorrow morning, we're also gonna work on 391, which we worked on this morning at 9 o'clock, and possible vote. And again, as a possible amendment to, hopefully an amendment to S100. We could be passing several bills tomorrow. And then I do want to spend some time tomorrow talking through at least what exists in the housing bill. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
And assigning sections to the bills to people who want to report on the housing bill, and for people who voted. No matter how you voted on the bill, you're certainly welcome to talk about any of the sections on the floor. Present sections on the floor if you so wish. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, so we should get that set so you have time to prepare whatever reports you want to write about this section of the bill. Wow, really good work so far this week. So Damien, so what we'll need tomorrow, because we still have to, so tomorrow on this bill, we have a lot of time scheduled for each of these bills, so we just have to decide, when you reread the bills tonight, just if there's anything that stands out that we need to deal with Damien, language, and we have time to turn it around before the end of the day.
Thank you.
Right.
You guys.
Yeah, there's hopefully it's still out there, not melt. I heard there was two, was it two today? Oh, tomorrow, okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I
You'll be
did
okay?
get one of Terry Corsone's chocolate chip cookies, so.
Oh.
I've gotten a cookie from her from like 6 different committees this year.
We're still alive.
Like saying,
Are we still online, Rob?
we are.